to the Free Kick Podcast. My name is Todd, and just like that, the Philadelphia Union's 9-game unbeaten run in MLS has come to an end thanks to the San Jose Earthquakes' 2-1 victory over the weekend against the Union. And I told you guys last episode, you guys will have a Monday episode hearing my thoughts from this game. Obviously, it is not Monday, it's Tuesday morning, Tuesday afternoon, when a lot of you guys are listening to this podcast. And I just said to myself, I don't want to record the podcast on Sunday when I have a pretty bad migraine and I'm not going to be at 100%. So I decided, okay, let's go ahead and wait till the next day when I know the migraine will pass and give you guys an episode where I can give you 100% energy. And so that's what we hope to do, at least here for this episode. This is going to be a long one with all the news that we've had the last couple of days. Yes, we're going to talk about Messi, but I'll be honest with you guys, I don't really want to spend a ton of time talking about Messi when there's been a million other podcasts that have done Messi-specific pods. You've seen all the articles out there. You've seen all the talk on social media. And I just don't want to spend my time, honestly, talking about Messi that much. Of course, I'll give you guys my thoughts and what it means for MLS, in my opinion. But I don't want this whole episode to be about Messi because we have a whole bunch of other news points to get to. Then we'll talk about that San Jose Philadelphia game. We'll go over our keys to the game. Yes, if you guys didn't listen to the last episode, we actually did keys to the game for the first time in months. And so that'll be nice to actually review that here in this episode. We'll go over 3 stars. We have a really, really good blunder of the week, which I think a lot of you guys saw this on social media. So when you guys hear the clip I play, you guys won't be surprised that this is blunder of the week. And then if time permits, we'll go over the goal breakdown. But, if we don't do that here, as always, you guys can check out the goals breakdown video on YouTube, youtube.com/freekickpod. And thank you, as always, to the people that are subbing to the channel, liking the videos, commenting on the videos, sharing the videos on social media. It means a lot. But I don't want to delay this episode longer than how I've already delayed it so far. So let's just get straight into the news. All right, so in my opinion, I think this was definitely missed by all the Messi talk last week. I think this is a huge news point that should be talked about, and we're going to talk about it here on this podcast, and that is Real Salt Lake have completed the signing of Chicho Arango from Pachuca. It is a club record fee of $6 million, according to Tom Bogert. 30 goals and 50 appearances for LAFC. Arango had during his time with LAFC from the 2021-22 season in August of 2021. And then he got sold this February to Pachuca. Wasn't even there for 6 months, and now he's right back to MLS. Pachuca are basically recouping the amount of money that they spent on acquiring him from LAFC. But this is a huge move for Real Salt Lake. They have long needed a number 9, a player that I wouldn't say is a world beater, but I would say a player that is great. I think we can say Arango is a great MLS player because you look at him during his time with LAFC, and it was a little bit of a surprise when LAFC moved him. I think the talk was that he wanted more money and LAFC weren't comfortable giving him the money that he wanted. And so they sold him to Pachuca, and now he's back in MLS. And Real Salt Lake are looking to compete in that Western Conference, get into a top playoff spot, because as things stand right now in the West for RSL, they currently sit in 11th place with 20 points. They're actually tied with Sporting KC for that 9th place spot in the playoffs. But you gotta figure, bringing a player that's a proven goal scorer in MLS, a player that was getting better and better with time with LAFC, you figure that this is going to be a player that's going to push Real Salt Lake ahead. And I think, too, when you look at the reactions on social media, people realize this is a big move because people were shocked when, like I said, LAFC moved on. The money situation wasn't there for Arango, and so LAFC got a good deal. But it's obvious that his time wasn't done, I want to say, in MLS, because there were rumors back then that teams were interested in MLS. When it was reported that LAFC were shopping him, LAFC couldn't get a deal done, and so they moved him to Liga MX. But what I am shocked about is that he's moved so fast from Liga MX back to MLS. I thought maybe, okay, it would be a year or two before we see him back in MLS, which we see a lot of times happen when we see players leave to go to Liga MX and they are back in MLS within a couple seasons, or, that's not even just Liga MX. You see it a couple times overseas, whether it be players going back to South America, players going to Europe, and then they eventually find their way back in MLS. Another player that I'm thinking of is Arango's now new teammate at Real Salt Lake, Jefferson Sarvinho, who apparently is being linked with a move outside of MLS once again. I believe he left initially to go back to South America, and then Real Salt Lake brought him back, and now he's reported to potentially want to leave MLS once again. But look, maybe with the arrival of Arango, maybe they can convince Jefferson to stay in MLS, and they can build something special out there in Salt Lake. But let's go ahead to point number 2 I want to bring up, and that is, this is going to be, I feel like, a long topic right here. LA Galaxy star forward Chicharito has suffered a torn ACL. The club announced, and he'll miss the remainder of the season. His contract's up after the season as well. We'll see if this is the end for Chicharito with the Galaxy. I don't think this is how Chicharito would want to end his career, but I'm not sure if the Galaxy would re-sign him. And this is a player that has won everything there is in Europe with Manchester United, with Real Madrid. We've seen him do it with Bayern Leverkusen. And came to MLS a few seasons ago, and maybe hasn't lived up to the former glory days like we saw at Manchester United, like we've seen with the Mexican national team. But, I do think a player like Chicharito coming to MLS, I think that was huge for the league to especially draw into getting those Mexican international fans to pay attention to MLS. And I think that's part of the reason why you saw the Houston Dynamo go out and sign Hector Herrera last season from Atletico Madrid, bringing in a huge national team player and just trying to get that Mexican national team audience to buy in to MLS. And to my surprise, last season, Hector Herrera was god-awful for Houston when he was brought in during the summertime, I want to say. And now, to his credit, he's looked like the typical Hector Herrera we've seen the last couple of years with Atletico Madrid, like the Hector Herrera we've seen for years with the Mexican national team. But Javier Hernandez Chicharito, like I said, has torn his ACL. And this saddens me because there's at least 15 ACL injuries in the women's game from the 2022-2023 season that I'm aware of, whether that be the college level, NWSL, the European leagues. We have those 2 ACL injuries in MLS, in Portland, a knee injury for Dylan Barrero with New England. We talked about all those ACL injuries here on this podcast. And I don't think this is getting talked about enough on social media. All these players that keep getting ACL injuries, and especially in the women's game. I feel like if we saw the last year 15, and I'm sure it's a lot more, but there's at least 15, like I mentioned, 15 women soccer players that have tore their ACL. And if we had that many men's players tearing their ACLs, you better believe that we would see this talked about all the time on social media. We'd see so many articles written. We'd see so many people talking about this on podcasts. But that's not the case. And I'm sure there are some, right? There are some podcasts out there that are covering all these ACL injuries. There are some people out there, The Athletic, I know, have covered the ACL injuries in women's soccer. But it's not enough. And it's sickening. It's honestly sickening that we've seen this many ACL injuries. And what's being done? Nothing. Nothing is being done. And yes, you can blame the playing surfaces. Of course, not all these injuries are going to be because of the surface. Some of them, of course. But I think a big part of the reason why we're seeing these ACL injuries, or if you even want to take it a step further and just classify all the injuries we've seen in soccer the last year, okay, I'll listen too. Because it's just way too many games being played. There's not enough rest. And that's why I'm pissed off for this Leagues Cup. And, if you're excited for Leagues Cup, I'm not going to try to convince you otherwise. I'm not going to try to tell you, hey, look, that's not the right decision. You shouldn't be happy for this. Like, if you're happy for it, be happy for Leagues Cup. But this is a clear money grab. These players are playing too many games. I mean, I look at the Philadelphia Union. Last season, they played what? Over 45 games, I want to say, last season? Maybe a little bit less. Around 40, maybe. Sounds about right. But they played from the end of February or early March all the way up until late November. And so the players go away for about a month. They enjoy time off with their families to recover. And then they're back in January for training camp. So you have a month off. That's all you have. Out of 12 months, you only have a month off to recover. And now it's right back to it. Right back to grind again. And now you're going to force these players to play a stupid money grab tournament. And that's why I hope the Union don't take this tournament serious. And I know Liga MX and MLS, they don't want that to be the case. That's why they're offering all these spots to get into CONCACAF Champions League, or I guess it's called, what is it, CONCACAF Champions Cup now. Did we talk about that last episode? I don't know. If we didn't, I'm definitely not going to add it to the show because we have way too many points to get to the rest of the show. I believe we did talk about that 2 episodes ago. But, you add those spots to get into the CCC, you add the money that you can earn from this tournament, you're going to convince teams to actually try in this competition. But we're in a situation again where if the Union go all the way to MLS Cup once again, they're only going to have a month off. I mean, it's no wonder we've seen so many injuries this season for the Union. It's no wonder we've seen so many injuries all around the world for soccer because players are only getting a month to recover. And leagues all around the world, and it's not just MLS, they keep adding competitions, more and more competitions. And it's why you see teams over in England not take the FA Cup, not take the Carling Cup series. They play their B squad. They play the reserve teams because they've got to try to get the first team as much rest as they can because they're playing multiple games a week. I mean, we just came out of a stretch where, look, I love all the union games that we've been able to go to in person the last month. All the games we've been able to watch weekly, 2 games a week. But it's not fair to the players. And I know some of you may be saying, well, look at all the money that they're getting paid. What do you mean that's not fair? Okay, they are getting paid more than most of us listening to this podcast. But you know what? They're still human beings. And they still need to recover, just like all of us. You go to the gym, and there may be a day where you just gotta relax because you've been pushing your body too much. But think about these players. All the traveling that they're doing. They have no time to recover. It's a quick little recovery session. Now they're right back out there on the training field, right back out there in a game. And it's no wonder we've seen so many ACL injuries. And it needs to be talked about. There needs to be more people writing articles. There needs to be more people on social media talking about all the ACL injuries in soccer. It is unacceptable. And it is unacceptable from whether it be MLS, whether it be the Premier League, whether it be UEFA, whether it be the Bundesliga. It doesn't matter what league it is. It doesn't matter what governing body it is. They are forcing too many games on these players. And you know why? You know why they're forcing too many games on these players? It's because of the money. And it is sickening that these organizations, these federations, these leagues, these teams, that is all they care about is money. They don't care about the players. They don't care about their health and safety. Because you know what? When they get injured, when it looks like they're not going to be the same player, they're going to throw you right to the curb and they're going to bring somebody else in. And you know what? If that player doesn't work out, they're going to go ahead and throw that player to the curb again. And now what? The rest of the world forgets about that player? Come on now. We're choosing money over humans. It's sickening. And like I said, I enjoy seeing the union as much as you guys do. I enjoy watching all the soccer we get to watch. But it is way too many games. And we're going to continue to see ACL injuries. We're going to continue to see hamstring injuries and all the other injuries we see that are involved in soccer because these players cannot recover in time. It is sickening. And once that money dries up, once companies stop investing, that's when we're going to start seeing less games. But the more money people throw at these leagues, we're going to keep adding more games. And that's why part of me is angry that we have, I think a salary cap's good for MLS. I was about to say, I'm angry that we have a salary cap in MLS. No, a salary cap is good, but the salary cap needs to get risen so teams can buy more players and rotate their starting 11. You want to try to have as little injuries as possible. And when you can't invest decent money into a decent bench and you're in the business of getting results, you're going to keep playing your best 11 players. But the more and more you play your best 11 players without resting and recovering, they're going to get injured. And that's why MLS needs to raise the salary cap. That's why, I wouldn't be against adding a fourth DP. But the salary cap's got to go up. The salary cap has got to go up. We've got to stop playing all these games. And that's not just MLS, that is the whole world. Told you guys that we were going to have a decent amount of time talking about that. We're 21 minutes into the podcast now, and we still have 5, 6 news points to get to, and we haven't even talked about the game yet. I mean, this episode's definitely going over an hour long, but that's what happens when when you get a ton of news during the week. So the rest of these news points, I'll try not to speak on them as long as I did the Real Salt Lake news and Chicharito news, but no promises. Point number 3 I want to bring up is former Philadelphia Union player Bajung Darboe has been traded to LAFC from Minnesota United for $50,000 in GAM plus a sell-on clause. And so why is this significant? Why am I bringing this up? Well, I mentioned former Philadelphia Union player. He was a bright spot in the Union's academy. I would say he was definitely a top 3 player throughout the whole system. And the Union lose him because Minnesota United and Chicago Fire were fighting over his rights. And so Darboe leaves the Union's academy, tries to go and sign for teams over in Europe. He trials for a couple teams. None of the trials work out. He can't get a contract. And so he comes back over to America where, okay, I know teams appreciate me. I know teams know how talented I am. And what's MLS do? They decide to let Minnesota United reclaim his rights. And yes, technically, Darboe was a Minnesota United academy player. He spent time as well in Chicago's academy. That's why there's 3 teams fighting for his rights, Minnesota, Chicago, and the Union. He leaves Minnesota, comes to the Union. But how's that fair? That Minnesota's academy shuts down, and now all those players are free to go sign wherever they want. And those players that sign at other academies have now also been reclaimed by Minnesota. It makes no sense to me at all, and I don't blame the Union for not paying $50,000 plus a sell-on clause to get him back, a player that they developed, a player that was in their academy. And I don't know if the Union tried to get Darboe back, but it's totally unfair that, a player that spent a couple seasons, a couple years in the Union's academy, the Union don't get any rights to him. Makes no sense to me at all. And so LAFC get a promising player. We'll see if he pans out the way that the Philadelphia Union staff thought he was going to pan out here. All right, point number 4. Phil Neville. Yes, Phil Neville. Yes, the former Inter Miami boss, Phil Neville, is joining the Canadian soccer men's national team coaching staff and will be part of Canada's soccer men's national team technical staff for the upcoming CONCACAF Nations League in Las Vegas. I am a little bit shocked, honestly, that Phil Neville wanted to get back to coaching that fast. Yes, it's not as a manager, but it is, again, involved with soccer. Again, at the national level. He was formerly with Lionesses in England before he joined Inter Miami. Now he's back with a national team, this time the Canadian men's team. And I think he's a good man motivator, tactician, not quite sure. But if they're looking for a person that's had a ton of experience playing in England as a player, which Phil does have, a player that has national team experience, which Phil does have, and a familiarity with players in MLS, well, Phil has all that. So I guess when you look at all that, it makes sense why Canada wanted to add him to the technical coaching staff, but shocked that he didn't want to take more time away for himself, and now he's back involved with soccer. Point number 5, FC Cincinnati are finalizing a deal to sign Gabon international striker Aaron Boupendza from Saudi Arabia side Al Shabab, fee north of $7 million, according to Tom Bogert. He's a 26-year-old striker, 13 goals and 3 assists in 20 appearances this season in Saudi Arabia. He He spent time in the second divisions in France, Portugal, as well as the first division in Turkey. And just as fast as FC Cincinnati got money for selling Brenner to Udinese and Serie A, they're putting that money to use in getting a player that's not played at the highest levels in Europe, which is fine. You don't have to play at the highest levels in Europe to turn out to be a good soccer player in MLS. Just look at the Philadelphia Union. But it is interesting to me to see, all right, obviously Chris Albright was scouting players for when they were going to sell Brenner, and they identified Aaron as a player that would intrigue them. And it's not often you see players leaving Saudi Arabia. Now with all the money that different clubs are offering players all around the world to come and play in Saudi Arabia. And so when I saw that a player was actually leaving, I was like, wow, this is a little bit of a shock because of how much money players are getting paid and just to play in this league. But I guess maybe Aaron wanted to test himself. Maybe he has hopes and aspirations to get back to Europe one day, and what better place to do that, or at least try that, than MLS and with FC Cincinnati. And I think this is going to be a great signing just because we've seen what Chris Albright's been able to do in such a short amount of time in Cincinnati. We know what he did here in Philadelphia Union with a limited budget. Now you give him some money and now you can go after those better targets. So I think this is going to be a great signing for FC Cincinnati. This is a player that's going to probably be a key part of the Cincinnati team for years to come. A Cincinnati team, by the way, that leads the Philadelphia Union by 10 points in the East. And point number 6. So I'm looking at my notes here, and I didn't mention the CONCACAF rebranding of the CONCACAF Champions Cup, which I thought I did 2 episodes ago. Apparently I did not. So here it is in my notes. Mentioning it now, I mentioned it, 5-10 minutes ago. So CONCACAF is rebranding its top men's championship to the CONCACAF Champions Cup as it expands to 27 clubs in 2024. The champion gets $5 million, while the winner previously only got $500,000. So that's a huge amount of money now for winning this competition. The final will go back to being just one leg, and the final will be on the weekend. So the previous CONCACAF Champions League, we know Lyon beat LAFC in the 2 legs, and now the final is going back to 1 leg, which it always should have been. And we talked about, the whole rebranding of the amount of clubs joining, I want to say a couple months ago. Pretty descriptive in my show description. So I'm sure if you guys want to listen to my thoughts on that, you guys could go back, search it, and you'd find it in one of those show descriptions. But we're not going to talk about, this. It's the same competition, but expanding to 27 teams. So that's all I want to mention on that. And then obviously the Messi to Inter Miami, and man, 30 minutes into this podcast and we haven't even talked about San Jose. I feel bad. I'm being honest, guys. I feel bad that we have not talked about this San Jose game. But I did warn you right at the beginning of the podcast, a ton of news to talk about. So I don't want to spend too long talking about Messi because, like I mentioned at the beginning, everybody has wrote articles about this, done podcasts about this, and what more can I add that other people haven't? The only thing you guys haven't heard is my thoughts on it, which, yeah, I'm super excited for Messi joining MLS. I think this is going to be huge for the league. And I mentioned it last episode with Ted. This is not only the biggest signing ever for MLS, this is also the biggest player to ever step foot and play for an American team. The only other player that's as big as this was Pele signing for the Cosmos in 1975. And I don't think America is ready yet for what Messi is going to do for the sport here. I mean, we already saw the amount of tickets sold for Inter Miami home games and Inter Miami away games. tickets have skyrocketed. And yes, if you have season tickets for one of these Miami away games, I say sell your tickets. I do. No, I'm not against people making money. I'm not against people making money on their tickets. If people want to spend ridiculous amounts of money to go see Messi, sell your tickets. Make some profit. But this is something that I never thought would happen. Yeah, there's always been rumors that, oh, Messi's going to come to MLS one day. Didn't think it would happen. Well, Messi could still play in Europe, where he's just coming off of winning the World Cup with Argentina against France. A tournament where Messi was the best player. A player that's still producing at the highest level. And yes, Messi said that the only European team that he wanted to go back to was Barcelona. He wanted to go back to Barcelona, but the whole financial situation still hasn't improved. And that's the whole reason he left Barcelona in the first place, is because of all the salary that they had to cut. And so he went to P Money Sign G and stayed there for 2 seasons, apparently hated it. Him and his family were not happy in Paris, wanted to go back to Barcelona. That didn't work out. And now Messi and his family decide, all right, it's time to go to Miami. They didn't want to go to Saudi Arabia, who were apparently offering Messi over $1 billion if he were to play in that league. Messi says, now the money's not everything. But Messi's going to get a ton of money from Apple, from Adidas, from their profit sharing. And that is something I wanted to talk about, right? There has been a lot of fake news on social media where I'm not even going to credit this Twitter account, but they basically said the Athletic said all this information. And then they said, oh, the Athletic said every single MLS team's going to contribute to Messi's salary. It's not true at all. I read every single article that the Athletics put out about Messi going to Inter Miami, and they never said that at all. There was a rumor a few weeks ago by some pro/rel dorks that said that, and I think that's where this Twitter account got that information, then decided to drag the Athletic into it. But that's not the case. All MLS teams aren't paying for Messi's salary. Messi does have deals, with Apple and Adidas. That's true. But they're separate from the deals that MLS signed with those companies. He'll get profit sharing from both companies, If they do well, Messi does well. Which they will. They 100% will make out great. This is best case scenario for Apple, best case scenario for Adidas. They are going to be selling lots of season passes, lots of Inter Miami Messi jerseys. So those companies, Messi, they're going to work out great. And the thing that I want to happen, I mentioned it, I want the salary cap to go up. And I hope that this brings more money for the players with revenue from the ticket sales, from jerseys, from the Apple subs. I hope not only Messi makes out from this deal, but all those other players make out well from this deal. The more exposure to MLS, the better. And that's why Apple wanted this exclusive partnership where people all around the world can watch MLS. All you have to do is sign up for Season Pass, and now you can watch every single MLS game. And you best believe people are going to do that with Messi signing with Inter Miami. Which is kind of funny, too, that we all knew if he came to MLS, it would be with Inter Miami, but the worst team, the absolute worst team in MLS, is Messi going to save this team and win them an MLS Cup? No, absolutely not. Will he get them in the playoffs? Yes, but he's not winning that MLS Cup. I'm sorry, Miami fans or people that are listening to this podcast. Messi is not winning MLS Cup with Inter Miami. And you guys can go ahead and record this. You can pin this. And if it happens, you can replay this all you want. But I don't see Messi winning MLS Cup with Inter Miami. I do not. With the way that roster's been built, with the limited amount of spending you can have in MLS, I don't see that happening at all. And even if, let's say Luis Suarez comes into Miami, Sergio Busquets, Angel Di Maria, let's say all these players do wind up signing for Inter Miami. That's still not good enough to win them MLS Cup. Okay, that's great, right? You're going to score a lot of goals, but you're going to leak goals like we've seen San Jose do the last couple years with Matias Almeida. Yeah, they scored a lot of goals, but they also conceded a ton. And so that's what's going to happen, if all these rumored players do wind up signing with Inter Miami. But yeah, I'm just super excited that Messi's coming to MLS. I think, the salary cap hopefully goes up. It should go up. I think we're going to see more players want to sign for MLS, sign for teams in MLS to say, hey, look, I play in the same league as Messi. I played against Messi. And I was thinking, well, when we talked about Kai Wagner leaving, potentially leaving, well, maybe this is playing on Kai's mind, saying, I want to play against Messi. I want to be in a league that Messi plays in. And maybe he signs a 2-year deal with the Union just to say that, hey, I played against Messi. Like, how many people can say that, right? How many people can share that story? Oh, I played against Messi. I shut down Messi. Not a ton. And same thing with Jim Curtin, right? Maybe he decides, yeah, I want to stay in MLS and coach against Messi. How many coaches around the world can say, yeah, I coached against Messi? Not a ton. And so I think from that aspect too, we can see a lot of players that potentially were going to leave MLS say, yeah, I'll stick around for another year or two just so I can play against Messi, say that I play in a league with Messi. And then I think we'll see, like I mentioned, younger and younger players, more and more players from Europe want to come to MLS just because Messi's here. And if Messi tears up MLS, it's probably not great publicity for the league. People are going to say the league's washed. If Messi gets shut out, okay, that's probably good for MLS. But, people are still going to find a way to complain. I don't think Messi's going to get shut out in MLS. I don't even know how well Messi will do in the league. I mean, David Beckham didn't do great his, year and a half, 2 years in MLS. And he had more of an impact off the field, exposure for the league, than he did on the field with the Galaxy, I would argue. And maybe that's the same thing that's going to happen with Messi. But yeah, this is really, really good for the league, for Inter Miami. And everything I mentioned, hopefully that comes true. And another point, I want to bring up 2 points real quick. All teams play for all players. So this is nothing new that all teams are paying for Messi to get here, but they're not paying Messi's salary. And no other clubs other than Miami will be paying anything more for Messi than they do for the TAM players that come into the league, the DP players that come into the league. Every other team and leagues around the world, they subsidize for each other, whether it be the TV revenue or I'm sure jersey sales as well. So, I mean, I don't think this is a bad thing. There's always going to be people that are trying to spin this in a negative way, saying, oh, this is bad for the league. But I think there's more positives to come out of this than negatives. And I'm sure we will see some teams decide, okay, let's go play at NFL stadiums so we can maximize on ticket profits. But it won't feel real until we see MLS showing Messi in an Inter Miami jersey. But let's go ahead and talk about this San Jose Earthquakes versus Philadelphia Union game. Hopefully, you guys are still here on the podcast listening, and hopefully, we don't have that much news to talk about for a very long time. But like we all know, the Earthquakes won this game 2-1, and I know right away people will say, well, the Union lost this game because they couldn't finish any of their chances. And I do agree 100% with you that the Union didn't finish their chances. Kranza had that miss that he put over the bar after Chicho cut it back, which he might have had a better angle just to shoot as opposed to cut the ball back to Julian Kranza. But you look at the form that Julian's been on the last couple of weeks, you would bet your money that he's probably going to put that shot on target, probably going to score, and he does neither. Doesn't score and definitely doesn't put that shot on target. You know, you had Mikael Uhre, who had a chance in the second half where he was in a 1v1 situation against Beeson. Uhre takes a touch a little bit to the right, and now he's away from the goal, but still forces a good save by Daniel. Daniel then had that big save on a Julian Kranza diving header in the second half, and then he had that huge save towards the end of the game when Jack McGlynn shot from distance. But at the end of the day, the Union just couldn't get that second goal. And this is a completely different game if the Union go into the half winning 2-1 as opposed to tied 1-1, because now San Jose are going to be chasing the game, and that gives the Union more opportunities to hit on the counterattack. And they did have opportunities in this game to hit on the counter, but they just couldn't capitalize on some of those chances that they had. And I think you've got to give credit to San Jose. I think, and again, this is my opinion, that's why I said I think, they're the best team that the Union have seen all season long. Better than Cincinnati away. Better than LAFC and CONCACAF Champions League. That's a tough one. I think if we just want to decide in MLS, then yes, San Jose were the best team that the Union have seen so far. And it took a wonder goal and great goalkeeping to beat the Union. Sure. But don't let that undermine the effort from San Jose. They were really, really good in transition. Probably the best transition team we've seen this season, other than LAFC and CONCACAF Champions League. You know, they had the pace with all three of their forwards in Cade Cal, Abobasi, and Espinosa. And Jim Curtin was asked after the game, you know, with an injury to Damian Lowe, you brought on Jack McGlynn, went back to the 4-4-2 diamond. What was the thinking with going back to the diamond, and how did Jack McGlynn perform? This is what Jim had to say.
The way the game was going as well with their front three was dangerous, you know, and they're very dynamic and athletic. I thought put in the two center backs there to deal with the Abobasi, who was excellent tonight, and then having a clear matchup with just Kai on their winger and Nathan on their winger. It gave us an extra number at all times, whereas the three-man back line with that front three is a little bit riskier. You might have seen a 4-4 game if Damian doesn't come out, but you know, we made the change, and I thought it solidified things, and it speaks to the player. You know, Jack McGlynn is that he came in and did a decent job, especially towards the end of the game.
Yeah, and the issue is when you're playing with three center backs is, yes, Jim Curtin said this so many times the last couple of weeks that he trusts his defenders to go up in 1v1 situations against any attacker in the league. And so you're going to have your three center backs be up against Abobasi, Cal, and Espinosa. Okay, that's fine. But the issue is, and this is where the issue becomes, your fullbacks are going to get caught up too high on the field, just like we saw in the first goal, with Nate Harriel being pushed way too far up forward, and now Cade Cal gets in behind. Good cutback. Nobody in the midfield tracks back, and that's the issue, right? You don't have your wingbacks tracking back, and you don't have your two midfielders and Leon and Jesus Bueno tracking back. And now, because of that, now San Jose has numbers. So they do the good job transitioning from defense, and they were pinned all the way back. And you guys will see that when I do the goals breakdown. They were pinned all the way back at the goal, and they transition all the way towards the Union's goal. And I should count how long that took. I want to say it took them 20 seconds to transition from that part of the field all the way to the Union's box. They were flying. And it came from Grasso winning the ball back, finding Jackson Yule, two great midfielders for San Jose, two defensive midfielders, right? Plays a long ball to Jeremy Abobasi, who comes deep to collect the ball. And now he sprays that pass forward to Cade Cal. And that is definitely the best transition goal we've seen against the Union in some time. And the midfielders I just talked about, they are so underrated for San Jose. They're workhorses. 99 out of 115 passes completed. 3 out of 5 tackles won. 20 ball recoveries, 5 interceptions. And I think this midfield is maybe one of the most, if not the most, underrated midfield in all of MLS. And they don't get the credit they deserve because people don't recognize the names on the back. But they are legit players. We saw that this Saturday night as Union fans. And we know what Jamiro Montero offers to this team. And he was great all night, I thought, for San Jose. You know, the Union tried to rough him up, get him off his game. But he brought the game to the Union, whether it be dribbling out of pressure, whether it be connecting on these quick 1-2s, finding space. Jamiro was great on the night. But the whole of San Jose's midfield, they were the stars. They were the best players on the night. And you can argue, yeah, Daniel was probably the star of the night with the big saves he came up with. But that midfield for San Jose controlled this whole game. Whether it be the passing in the final third, the passing in the attacking half. Just a really good performance from Jackson Yule, Grasso, and Jamiro Montero. And yes, the Union not finishing their chances was huge. But as I mentioned, that first goal that San Jose scored, quick transition, you don't have your midfielders in Leon Flock and Jesus Bueno tracking back, and it leaves Jeremy Abobasi wide open. So Cade Cal can play that cutback. Your fullbacks get caught way too high up the field. And San Jose makes the Union pay. They make them pay. And look, there was a couple times too, right? Where Espinosa, who I think also had a really good game. Yes, he didn't score a goal. He's been hot, red hot. We talked about that with Ted. But there was a couple times, right? Where he got the best of Kai Wagner. Got in behind. And he's playing the ball across the box to Jeremy Abobasi, who, yeah, his touch let him down sometimes this game. And, you know, if his touch was more consistent, one, we'd probably see him with a national team more. Because it's never been a question of, can he score? He's a natural finisher, right? But sometimes it's that touch. And if you don't have a good first touch, we've seen that with Kasper Schmeichel, teams aren't going to keep you around forever. But when you're Jeremy Abobasi and you're putting up double-digit goals every single year, okay, yeah, you can put up with not the greatest touch. I mean, he had a great touch on that first goal, right? First time finish, bottom corner. Just a little bit inconsistent for, I would say, the national team for San Jose fans, but he was fantastic on the night. You guys heard Jim Curtin say that, and you know, if that touch was a little bit better, he's probably putting the ball in the back of the net a second time in this game. And the Union, and I don't want to say they're fortunate that they only lost this game 2-1, because in reality, this game probably should have ended as a draw. It probably should have. But to the goalkeeping in the midfield by San Jose takes a world-class strike, a wonder goal to beat the Union. Okay, hats off to them, and you can't be disappointed in this in this loss, in my opinion. And I think Tim mentioned it, that San Jose is going to be a legit threat in the West. And I think if they can go out and buy players, preferably on the wing, to constantly rotate with Kid Cal and Espinoza, I think this is going to be a difficult team for the whole of MLS. We're already seeing them play Lucci ball, buying into his ideas. And if they can bring game changers off the bench, keep everybody fresh, this is a scary team. And they're not peaking at the right time. They're heading in the right direction, because as Jim Curtin always says, you want to be peaking in the fall, heading into the playoffs. And if San Jose can start to peak then, have a couple new pieces to come off the bench, this is a team I probably wouldn't want to see in the playoffs. And like I mentioned, it hurts just a little bit that the Union lost, but it's not surprising because San Jose hadn't beaten the Union since 2013. So I mentioned it again last episode. They were due, but there are positives you can take away from this game, whether it be, the Union conceding and then showing that fight that, hey, look, we're not going to panic and we can grab a goal, tie this game up. They did that. They created plenty of chances. 7 of their 19 shots were on target. They just couldn't finish them. And, maybe if it's against a different team with worse goalkeeping, then some of those chances go in. I'm not concerned by this result at all. Hurts just a bit, but look, goalkeeping that's as good as Daniel, as good as Andre Blake is, that's the difference from getting 3 points or 1 point. And Daniel and that midfield for San Jose, in my opinion, were the difference on the day. And, at the halfway point now in MLS, your Philadelphia Union set in third place. We all know that. In the East, 2 points behind Nashville and 10 points behind Cincinnati. And the Union are on pace to have 60 points, which would be the second most in club history, which would be fantastic. They have the third most goals in MLS with 28. Ua Carranza and Gazlag have picked off where they left off last season. And this team has proved, just like last season, that they can win on the road, that they can play from behind, that they can concede a goal first and then tie things up. And the only thing you do is hope that can continue for the second half of the season, which I'm sure it will, because they haven't proved to you that they can't. And again, I'll go back to that Chicago Fire game when the Union were down 2-0 in Chicago. They get 2 goals in 2 minutes, something like that. And I think that gave the Union all the confidence in the world, that told them, hey, look, we can play from behind. We can go on the road and get results. And so you hope that they can continue to play with that mindset, which, they showed it last year. They've showed it this year. So I believe that will be the mindset for the second half of the season for the Union. Quickly, let's go over the keys to the game. Number one, I said don't concede first, because we know the Union have done that coming into this game in half their games, 8 out of 16 games, and now it's 9 out of 17 games. And they're tied for the most wins when they concede first, 3. But like I mentioned, you don't want to concede against the San Jose team. Coming into the game, they were 5-1-3 when they score first, and when scoring first at home, they are 4-0-1. So, yes, we've seen this Union team come from behind like we did Saturday night, but it's not a recipe for success. Obviously, San Jose scores the first goal. To the Union's credit, they tie this game up, but give up that goal in the second half to eventually lose this game 2-1. Point number 2, I said, don't allow their wingers to get in behind. Espinoza, career year, he was having 8 goals coming into the match. Cade Cal was fantastic with the U20s. Both players I thought were great on the night against the Union. Cade Cal came out with an assist. Espinoza didn't come out with an assist or a goal, but he created so much space there on the right side of the field for San Jose. Kai Wagner had his hands full, and Damian Lowe as well when the Union were playing 3 in the back. And Yeah, that's obviously a fail because Cade Cal, we talked about it 10, 15 minutes ago, got him behind for the first goal. Both wingers caused issues all night for the Union, and that is a fail. And then point number 3, I said timing your runs is important for the Union. And yes, that's the only pass on the night because there was one offsides call on this game for the Union with Mikel Uhre being free a couple times, and the pass didn't always come when it needed to. He had that big chance in the second half, but his touch takes him away from the goal, and he's able to get the shot off. But like we said again, big save from Daniel. So that is a pass, and unfortunately, the Union came up against a wonder goal and great goalkeeping. And when you have great goalkeeping, that's going to do wonders for your team. Being a Manchester United fan, I've seen that the last couple years. Maybe not the last 2 years with De Gea, but I can think back from 16, 17, 18, when those Manchester United teams were god-awful. And yeah, you can argue and say, yeah, they're still pretty bad. But man, Manchester United should have been finishing mid-table back then. And if it wasn't for De Gea's shot-stopping ability, oh boy. Oh boy. Would have been even worse as a Manchester United fan. But let's go over 3 stars on the night, which I honestly just want to give the 3 midfielders and Daniel the 3 stars on the night because they were. They were the best players on the field. But we haven't changed 3 stars to that. We keep just giving 3 stars to Union players. Maybe that's something we do in the second half of the season. Maybe that's something we do next season. Talk about just the 3 best players on the field in general, whether it be the opposition or Union players. Doesn't matter. The 3 best players. But number 1 on the night, Kai Wagner, 1 assist, 3 interceptions, 6 recoveries, 1 out of 2 tackles, 1, and 3 chances created. And yeah, I mean, offensively, Kai Wagner creates. That's what he does. His crossing wasn't great this game. And it was honestly hard for me to pick 3 stars on the night because I didn't think there were any players deserving on the Union side. But since we always name Union players, had to pick some. Yes, Espinoza got the best of Kai sometimes. Yes, he made it difficult all night for Kai Wagner, but for the most part, Kai Wagner, I thought, held his own. Number 2, Nate Harriel, 3 interceptions, 7 ball recoveries, 4 out of 6 ground duels, 1, 9 passes into the final third, and it does feel weird to pick both fullbacks as players 1 and 2 for the stars on the night for the Union because both goals came from their side, or the ball was on their side. Kai Wagner had to deal with the throw-in on the left side of the field. Eventually, the ball got moved from right to left, and it's a fantastic strike to put San Jose up 2-1. And then Nate Harriel and Jacob Glesnes were dealing with Cade Cal when he decides to cut back. But it was Nate Harriel who let Cade get in behind. So, again, it feels weird to name the 2 fullbacks as star players, but I mean, other than those moments right there, both played well defensively. 3 interceptions, Nate Harriel, 7 ball recoveries, 4 out of 6 ground duels, 1, 9 passes into the final third. This was probably the best offensive game we've seen from Nate Harriel. And if Nate can keep this up, we've always said he's been a good defensive player, but you want to see the end product be there. And that's now back-to-back good games we've seen from Nate offensively. 4 shots on target last game against Montreal? Something crazy like that. Getting forward a ton. Good crosses in the air or on the ground the last couple games from Nate. So, hopefully his offensive game continues to progress, and then that right back spot would be hard for Bizo to get back. And then number 3, I think Jack McGlynn stepped in well, where he's been away for a while from this team, and he's asked to come off the bench. 45 out of 46 passes completed. Unbelievable from Jack McGlynn. Best passer on the team. 9 passes into the final third. 3 out of 4 ground duels, 1. And yeah, it's a part of Jack McGlynn's game that gets talked down the most is his defensive game. But we've seen him step up in games this season defensively. And, if Jack can take his defensive game where his offensive game is, And this is a player that's going to be playing in a top 5 league before you guys know it. I do think the Netherlands league would be great for Jack, where it's a very good technical league, a league that prioritizes passing. And so I'm sure one day we'll probably see Jack McGlynn playing there, but for the time being, he is a Philadelphia Union player. Let's go ahead and talk about blunder of the week. We're going to skip goal breakdown. You guys can watch the YouTube video for that. And I don't know what to say about this blunder of the week, and you guys got to hear this blunder of the week. So this is from Fox News's Brian Kilmeade on Lionel Messi coming to MLS, and this is what he had to say about when David Beckham joined MLS.
Yeah, the only thing I worry about, he doesn't speak English, and I want to see him sit down and talk. One thing about David Beckham, he learned to speak English for us, only with an accent.
Oh my gosh! Did you really just say that? David Beckham learned. David Beckham learned to speak English, guys. But he developed an accent along the way. And then apparently a couple days after this, because Brian was getting dragged on social media, as he should have. And he says, I was joking, guys. Dude, you're not joking. You were dead serious when you said David Beckham had to learn English. Oh my God. There's a lot I can say about political talk, but this isn't a political show. And so we're going to leave that aspect out of it. But dude, number one, this is terrible on your producers, right? Gonna give you the slightest benefit of the doubt, Brian, that your producers gave you this information and maybe they give you bad information about David Beckham. But I don't think you deserve the benefit of the doubt, because who doesn't know David Beckham? David Beckham. Man, there is so much that I could say that would definitely get me in trouble. And I had to make this blunder of the week, but man, if I oh man. I'm not gonna say what I really want to say, but how don't you know who David Beckham is? Like I refuse to believe that you don't know who David Beckham is. The greatest, not the greatest ever player to play for Manchester United. One of the greatest players to play for Manchester United. One of the greatest players to play for the English national team. David Beckham, you can argue, had a bigger exposure for football off the pitch than he did on the pitch. I mean, he was a terrific player on the field, but what David Beckham did for himself off the field, building his brand when players weren't interested, when building a brand wasn't as big as it is now today. I mean, look, Team Messi. You have the CR7 brand. Doesn't Mbappe have his own brand? I mean, so many soccer players have their own brands now, and David Beckham does something that's unheard of and creates David Beckham's brand. And there's no way, right, that this guy doesn't know who David Beckham is. There's no way that he's very confident in David Beckham not knowing English until he came to America. There's no way, right? But I guess so, because he seemed really confident in that clip. And then he says, I want Messi to learn English. I don't care what you want. Messi doesn't need to learn English. Oh, just because you want to have a conversation with Messi in English. One, you're definitely not getting an interview with Messi. There's no way. There is no way. I mean, maybe maybe MLS allows that. Maybe Messi's camp allows Messi to do an interview with Fox News, but I don't think so. I don't think so at all. That's not an area. No, I'm not gonna get myself in trouble. But we're not talking politics. But that's yeah, no. I mean, there is so much I want to say. There is so much more I want to say, but you're not gonna keep everybody happy at the end of the day. So I'm just gonna leave it at that. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. Longer episode than we normally do. But if it wasn't for 40 minutes, right, of the news, 30 minutes of the news, I don't know. We talked a while talking about the news. So if it wasn't for all that, then this probably would have been around our typical hour-long episode, but it was not. So if you guys aren't following on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, follow at Free Kick Pod. Hopefully you guys are still listening to the podcast. Wherever you get your podcast at Free Kick, YouTube channel, youtube.com/Free Kick Pod. And since the Union don't have a game this week, I definitely want to try and get a fan on the podcast, talk about the season. And maybe it's going to be somebody that's been on the podcast before, but they haven't been on in a very long time. But when July comes and the League's Cup's around, I don't plan on covering the League's Cup. I mean, you guys heard me go on a rant earlier about the money grab of a tournament. So in the summertime, I definitely want to bring fans on the podcast. And if they want to talk about League's Cup, then we can talk about League's Cup. But yeah, I want to talk to a lot of new fans. I mean, that's how this podcast started, right? It's how you guys found out about this podcast, is because I started interviewing fans, talking to them about the Union's previous seasons, how they became fans of the Union. And so I want to dive back into that around the 1st of July. And so if you're interested, you guys can hit me up on social media, and I've got to get better, right? Responding to DMs on social media. I haven't responded to some people on there, and I do apologize. So I need to get to people that have hit me up. Yeah, there's just no excuse for me not getting back to people on social media. So I do apologize. And yeah, you can hit me up on social media. That's fine. Whether it be on my personal account, It's a Todd's Life, or at Free Kick Pod, I'll definitely get back to you, even though some people I haven't got back to in a week. So I do apologize. And I do want to get new fans on the podcast talking about the Union, and yeah, hearing more and more people's stories, how they became fans of this team, whether this is your first time getting into the team too. Would love to hear that as well. So yeah, that's what I plan on doing here in the summertime, and hopefully we can get somebody on the podcast later this week, and then on Sunday maybe we can do a Orlando City preview episode, since we play Orlando next Wednesday. So not your typical week for the podcast, but we'll still try to get content out there for you guys. But with that said, my name is Todd, and this is the Free Kick Podcast.